Look, you're really, really welcome here this morning. For many of you, it's the first time, it's your first week here in term. For some of you, your first time visiting Newman House Chaplaincy. We really hope that you have a happy year and a happy time here at the chaplaincy, and with lots of time to get to know each other and the team here. My name is Fr Stephen Wang. I'm the senior chaplain. We have a wonderful mix of chaplains and team around us here, and you'll get to know people over the years, so you're really, really welcome. And I wish I had a different gospel to preach about today. The priests often say that, but just today I'd like a nice, straightforward, easy gospel to say some nice things to you about. But this has got to be, in the 3 years, one of the most difficult, confusing gospel readings you can get. So that's the reality. Here we go. Quick summary. We've just heard this, but just to remind ourselves. So there's a steward, an administrator. He gets fired. And in response, while he's still got the keys and the bank account, he goes to the different people who owe money to his master, his boss. And he lets them off some of their debt to win their favour. This is a summary. So you owe this master money. He lets you off some of the debt. You're very happy, you've saved some money, he's made some friends, but in effect, he's stealing his master's money to win him friends. And then, when the master finds out, instead of arresting him and taking him to court, he praises him for his cunning and astuteness. What's going on? Are we meant to admire his dishonesty? Probably not. Or is this just a story about cunning and quick thinking, which we're all meant to have? Or some biblical commentators have tried to say that he's not really being dishonest. He's just foregoing maybe the commission or the interest that was owed. So he wasn't really stealing. Or is it really one of these parables about the master? We're meant to think of the master, who is compassionate and forgives and doesn't judge as harshly as we'd expect. An image of God, the God who surprises us and sometimes doesn't tell us off when we expect it. And 1,000 other interpretations, and maybe the final interpretation is that Jesus just wanted to confuse us. So just here's 2 ideas, and I'm trying not to read too much into this, read too many biblical commentaries, just to look at what Jesus says about the parable afterwards, because very often he tells a story and then he gives you a key to understand it. The first thought of Jesus about the parable then is that it's a very specific question for all people, and for Christians especially, about how to use money. How to use money which Jesus says is unjust or tainted or dirty or complicated. And for us to realise that in this story and in Christian history, money is always ambiguous. It's always dangerous. It's never just neutral and simple and uncomplicated. Never. Maybe as Christians you might try to avoid it completely, as some radical Christian communities have done. And instead, Jesus says, yes, it's tainted, but use it to win friends so that they can welcome you into the tents of eternity. Use it, in other words, for others. Use it for others. To win friends, to help them, to build relationships. You can't avoid it. It's there, it's part of the world, it's part of being alive, but put the focus on using this ambiguous gift for the sake of others and not for yourself. And this story, if you interpret it in this way, it follows the pattern of Jesus' teaching in St. Luke's Gospel. The call to give alms, to generosity. Jesus earlier in the Gospel, he says, "Give and there will be gifts for you." He says, "Lend without any hope of reward, and your reward will be great." I was thinking about this last week, money and possessions, and because the beginning of the academic year, I did a radical spring clean last week. I've been driving the team here crazy. Not just a spring clean, it's that, what's that Japanese book? This Japanese ultra-obsessive tidy thing that was all the rage last year. Where you go through every drawer and box and file and corner, you take out what you haven't used in the last year, every book, file, folder, sock, mug, pen. You ask yourself, what is this doing here? What is this doing in my life? Do I need it? Do I want it? Is it helping me? Would it be better somewhere else? I have had the most amazing detox. Bin liners filled with clothes going to charity shops, books given away, files shredded and recycled. After Mass, you're invited to see the miracle of Fr Stephen's office and to stroke the worktop and to polish the desk with me and to see the books on the back row that you can now see because there isn't a double parked row of books in front of them. So, this is my week last week. I'm not saying there's any particular virtue in what I've done. It's my lust for tidiness and the need for space. But it made me think, in the light of the gospel, of all the stuff I have, stuff I didn't even know I possess, and how to use it well, or whether to hold on to it at all. The simple challenge from Jesus, hidden in the gospel, I'm not saying it's clear, but I think it's part of the meaning, is whatever you have in your possession, use it for others and not just for yourself. You don't have to give everything away, but certainly if you haven't used it for years, what's it doing there still? If this thing, this money, this credit card, this coin, this whatever, helps you to live well, then great. If it doesn't, or if it could help someone else more, what should you do with it? If it helps me, I'm being personal now, to be a loving priest, a loving friend, a loving chaplain, then great for the moment. But if it's getting in the way, if it's harming me, or if it actually could be radically helping someone else, and it wouldn't cost me a lot to get rid of it, then why don't I change my lifestyle a little bit? Use money, says Jesus, that tainted thing, to win friends, use it for others, use it for eternity. And notice the language, use it. Use it. Do not be used by money. You are doing the using. But the constant danger is that money starts to use you. Subtly, you become enslaved to the money, rather than the money being used for your proper and good and holy purposes. Jesus says bluntly, you cannot serve. Notice the language again. It doesn't say you can't use money and serve God. He says you can't serve both God and money. It's simply impossible. The classic image of the rider standing on two horses, yes? My left foot's on the left horse, my right foot is on the right horse. I'm holding both the reins, I'm galloping along, having a great time, but it can't go on forever. I'm going to come to that tree or that fork in the road, and I'm going to have to make a decision of which horse I am actually riding. You cannot serve both God and money. You're called to choose, to reflect. What are your priorities? Ultimately, is it about God? Okay, so there's something definitely about money and choices and priorities and using our possessions well for God and for His good purposes and for our good purposes and for others. There's something else in this parable, though, where Jesus says, speaking of the parable, if you can be trusted in little things, then you can be trusted in great things. If you are dishonest in little things, then you will be dishonest with great things. It's a truism. It's no less true for that. We might have big plans for our life, big hopes and dreams, big plans for this week. But each life, each week, is made up of so many small moments. Very small actions and decisions and conversations. Are we trustworthy in the present moment, in the little things? It's a simple question. It's about who you are, your integrity as a person, as a Christian. The prophet Amos in the Old Testament sees so many people dishonest in his society, in the little things, fiddling the books, fixing the exchange rates, oppressing the poor in very subtle hidden ways, twisting and loading the system to their advantage so that others suffer incrementally. And the Lord swears in Amos, "Never will I forget a single thing you have done." It's tough. Never will I forget a single thing you have done. But as Christians in faith, we're not meant to hear this as a sort of paranoid statement. Yeah, God is like some kind of drone hovering behind me at 3 feet. It's that God sees us with love all the time. He has compassion on us. And yes, he doesn't forget who we are and what we've done, because he cares about us and because he cares about others. This is the little way of St. Therese of Lisieux, isn't it? That we're called to do little things with great love. And, again, this is to encourage us to know the significance of the small things that we do this week, that they're part of God's plan for us and they're part of God's building of his kingdom. You know that you are not forgotten. Nice illustration of this week. Some of you know that I've got a new job. I'm still here as university chaplain, but I've been made vocations director in the diocese here, in Westminster Diocese. So I've had the last week having lots of meetings and handovers and working with the vocations team. And there was some great discussion from Father Stuart and Father Mike advising me about what they are looking for in young men who are discerning the priesthood. They had a big list, of course, but they said one of the key things that they're looking for when they meet people thinking about priesthood is how they live their ordinary Christian life now, in this moment. How does this guy now, this week, in all his ordinariness and complicatedness, how does he pray? How does he relate to people? How does he serve others? How does he work? How is he committed to his parish, to his faith, to the people of his parish? It's the small, ordinary things of today, the habits of life, that are actually very telling signs of what this man will be like in the future as a seminarian and as a priest. And not just the wonderful story he tells you about how much he wants to be a priest, which is really important, but it's not the whole story by any means. Because the priest, in 6-8 years' time when he's ordained, he's not just going to magically appear, to materialise when the bishop lays hands on this man. The priesthood is built on the person. Grace, the grace of ordination, builds on the humanity and the Christian life of this man. As St. Thomas Aquinas says, grace perfects nature, it does not destroy it. Lovely example of this yesterday, not with the priesthood but with religious life. Sister Hannah Corcoran, she was a PhD student sitting where you are a year ago. She did many years here on her PhD, and I bumped into her at Farm Street Church with her habit with 7 other novices. They'd been to a day of reflection there, so it was so nice to see Sister Hannah after she'd been a student here. What did she spend her life doing here? Micro-measuring microspheres. She was a nano-engineer or something like that. Yeah, she did a PhD in mechanical engineering, how to perfect the sphere. Really interesting, actually. We should get her to do a talk on it here. But you might say, what's that got to do with religious life? Well, I'm not going to make some clever link between spheres and whatever. But without a doubt, and I know Hannah, I'm not flattering her now, just her ordinary faithfulness to being a student, to being a friend, to being a colleague, over those years, longing to be a sister, but not rushing it. Her faithfulness in small things has become the foundation of her faithfulness, I hope and pray, in religious life. And the great things that God wants to do through her and the other sisters, he's made the foundation of that in everyday, ordinary life. And of course, this is my point, it's the same for you. Not necessarily to the priesthood or the religious life, but at the start of this academic year, you want to live an amazing life. The hopes you have for your future, your career, your relationships, your family, this future will be built on the person that you are today and the person you're becoming this year. It's going to be an amazing year, really. So much of it is out of our control, but the present moment is down to us, to you. How do you live today? How do you love today? How can you be today, in this moment, a person of integrity, of faith, of generosity, of joy? This is what makes the real difference. Let me finish with the words of Jesus. The person who can be trusted in little things can be trusted in great. That's a statement, but it's also a promise. He promises you amazing things in the future if you promise him the gift of your today.